everyone, and welcome to CoinDesk Live. We are coming to you from Solana's Breakpoint in Abu Dhabi. I'm Jen Sanasi here with my co-host, Marissa True, and we're going to bring you the latest and greatest from Solana's flagship conference. Marissa.
Hi.
Welcome to the Middle East.
Great to be here. The last time I was here was actually about 7 years ago, and everything has changed. Not only has the market developed, so many new things have emerged, but also just the UAE being a crypto hub has been probably the biggest revolution in the past half decade.
That's exactly what I thought when you said everything has changed. The Middle East, the UAE in particular, has really focused on bringing Web3 companies here, really focused on regulation, and we've seen how the region has been able to progress. Last week I was at Binance Blockchain Week. This week we're here at Solana Breakpoint. We're seeing all of the builders come here. We're hearing the conversations. We're hearing the industry go forward. And it really is, I think, an indication of a more mature industry than maybe we saw a few years ago.
Definitely. I think it's basically been embedded in how much crypto is being used in payments throughout a variety of already consumer-facing products. Like, I was actually surprised. It's been a minute since I was in this country, in this city, so I was having a look at some of the stats, and I was surprised at how high a lot of them were. I think there was something around, or just over 40% of luxury hotels accept crypto as payments. The major airlines, Emirates and Etihad, also accept digital assets as a payment method. Just seeing that proliferate through the general consumer economy, I don't think exists as readily everywhere else as it does here.
I didn't know that. I would have been booking my flight and booking my hotel using crypto. So that's a good little piece of information when I come back next year for the conferences here. There are some stats that I wrote down here too. 59% of investors have invested in crypto here in Abu Dhabi, and the United Arab Emirates has a crypto ownership rate of over 25% of its population, with a 210% year-on-year growth. And so I think that progression with regulation and having the firms set up shop here has really kind of worked out for the audience here. But I want to pause for a second and take a step back. When we walked into the conference and walked the show floor, it was absolutely incredible. I saw all of my favorite cultural moments here. I went to the Bonk booth. I saw Bonk. I think the Pudgy Penguins were not far from there. And so while we're having this conversation about the industry being more mature, that institutional adoption that's coming in, that we're going to have so much we're going to talk a lot about that here at the desk. The fun cultural stuff is still there, and the communities are still showing up time and time again.
Yeah, I mean, I think the ecosystem is thriving. I think what's so beautiful to see is, especially for myself, coming from a different ecosystem, I spend most of my time in the Aptos ecosystem, sort of different blockchains have their own planet, as it were. And so when you're in one ecosystem environment, you kind of get a gauge of that atmosphere. And then when you come to another, it feels like a whole different world. And what I also love seeing is that there's a lot of cross-pollination that I feel is happening. There's a lot of projects who exist throughout the industry. They're integrated with a variety of protocols. So it kind of feels like this universe is really coming together in a really interesting way. And to your point about institutional adoption and then also the cultural component, what I love about crypto was that it was always a very much grassroots, a bottom-up movement. And now we're sort of meeting in the middle as institutions come top down. So I think we're at this beautiful balancing point that we just haven't had up until this point.
Okay, so we're going to have a lot of people here at the desk over the next 2 days. We're on for 2 hours today, 2 hours again tomorrow. Who are you looking forward to speaking with?
Oh, you can't ask me to pick my favorites ahead of our conversation with them. So I had the privilege of interviewing Yatsu before, and I thought it was one of the most inspiring conversations I had, and I know he's on our roster, so he's definitely one I've got an eye on.
Anthony Scaramucci is going to be at the desk later today. He loves to give a hot take, so I can't wait to hear what he has to say. And we're going to have a bunch of folks from across the Solana ecosystem talking about the different developments, institutional, the cultural story, why the UAE is so important. And so, I love bringing these stories to the folks at home.
And I think also it's great to just have these stories to tell. I think it's been a really, really big year for crypto, and we're finally at a point where there's just so much industry confidence within our industry and beyond it that we can really fall back on, and I think that's wonderful to see.
All right, let's talk about that now with our first guest today, the head of strategic partnerships at the Solana Foundation. Joins us now, Amira Valiani. Amira, how's it going?
It's going great. The energy is insane. The bonk booth was very cool.
Very
There's actually
cool.
a slide that you can take to go down from the second floor to the first floor.
No
Powered
way.
by bonk, yeah.
I think there's a Wheel of Fortune style wheel there.
Right next to,
as well.
I think some hoops you can shoot
Yeah.
with bonk. I mean, there's all kinds
So
of cool
fun.
stuff happening.
So
You
fun.
can see the robots fighting. That's not bonk, that's someone else, but there's like robot fighting happening. So cool. I'm feeling great.
Well, we got to explain that to our audience at home. You can't just throw robot fighting
I
out
can
there
explain that, yeah.
and not tell us what it is. I know that there is going to be robot fighting, but how's that going to work?
Well, so the robot fighting is brought to us by a company called Ultimate Fighting Bots, which is built on a protocol called BitRobot. BitRobot's a DeepIn protocol. So I used to work in DeepIn. DeepIn's very near and dear to my heart. And what you're seeing is a proliferation of DeepIn teams that are thinking about data collection for the physical world. So the thesis here is, we're just going to need vast swaths of data to power all of AI. Now, for your LLMs, like that data exists on like the decades of internet writing that we've done, your Reddit posts, your Facebook, like all the New York Times articles, whatever. We don't have the same kind of compendium of data for our physical world. And so what these teams are doing is they're using robots and figuring out different ways to like get people to engage and control them and act like humans would to help build the data set for our physical world. And so the Ultimate Fighting Bots is kind of a fun way to help figure out, well, how do humans move in the real world? How do they react to certain stimuli? And they're really fun to watch. So you can go see some robot fighting outside.
I think we might have a robot at the desk later. We'll try and work that out.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I can hook you up.
Okay, great.
I know some robots.
Introduce
Great.
us to it.
All right, so yeah, if you needed a reason to stick around, a robot might be here later.
I got you.
So you mentioned DeepIn, and I think DeepIn's probably been one of the biggest growth sectors within the Solana ecosystem over the last few years. What are some of the other dominant areas that you've seen?
Well, I'll sort of set the stage and say when we think about Solana, the thing that we just keep coming back to is this idea of internet capital markets. So the thesis is one blockchain where every asset from stablecoins to T-bills to tokenized data in the physical world, all these things exist in sort of one place. And so what's really rich about the Solana ecosystem is this thesis of having everything tradable in one market. And I think over the past few years, you have seen an explosion in all kinds of markets on Solana. But I don't want to cop out of your question. I'll just say, like, for us, it's very important to see all kinds of markets really thrive on chain. And we think it's really critical to this vision of NASDAQ at lightning speed with every asset tradable. The places that we've seen extraordinary pickup really have to do with what we call the money side, or the money stuff side of the chain. So this is all things institutional. You're going to see some institutions make really big announcements here. Every major institution in the world, financial institution, is thinking about blockchain, and almost all of them are either building on Solana or thinking about building on Solana. And of course, payments. I spent a lot of time on payments. We've seen extraordinary growth of payments on Solana, and this really takes a lot of different shapes. I think the places where there's the most product market fit in payments on chain and on Solana in particular have to do with cross-border payments. It makes a lot of sense, right? Moving money across countries is very clunky, costs a lot of money, you have to go through multiple hops. Even the services that specialize in doing this, like Western Union and MoneyGram, even they have these kind of like crazy correspondent banking networks that they work through. And so we're seeing a lot of traction among companies that specialize in cross-border payments say, hey, I actually need this now. The stack is here, the regulation is here, let me figure out how I can experiment with blockchain and get my strategy going ASAP.
Marissa was mentioning ecosystem collaboration earlier. Like I said, I was at Binance Blockchain Week last week where Solana had a presence, and there was a big focus on ecosystem collaboration. When you think about internet capital markets and Solana's position in it, moving forward, or the future you're building towards, is it one that is competitive with other layer ones or layer twos, or a more collaborative environment, and what does that look like?
It's an interesting question. The honest truth is I don't spend too much time thinking about other layer ones. I've lived in Solana world for for 4 years now, basically. That's not to say that there's a collaborative or competitive environment. I think we're really laser focused on this idea of building one big internet capital market. But I think in general, as an industry, we're really thinking about the future of finance and how to make sure that people have, for me, the thesis is more inclusive access to assets, the ability to move money across borders in a way that's cheap and efficient, really giving people access to the financial opportunities that in the US, where I'm from, we often take for granted. And that's a mission that people are on together across many different chains. And so for me, if you're thinking about that end mission and you're excited about this idea of financial inclusivity, about broadening access to opportunity, I don't care what chain you're from, I want to work with you.
And I think that's also a message that applies to builders that exist across the space, those that are potentially experimenting with different protocols, those who've kind of beelined for Solana. But for those that are still exploring this industry, trying to figure out what they want to build next, what is your message to them? And why is building on neutral infrastructure so critical to their start?
So my first message to them is build something useful, right? So I do think that there's an issue in our industry of people taking problems that they want to solve and figuring out how to shove blockchain into them. Not every problem is going to need blockchain. But if you're building in the space, you've probably found a problem that has some kind of blockchain association with it. If you're going to do that, well, what are the keys that you need to solve for? One, you need cheap, fast infrastructure. That's table stakes at this point, right? You need to be able to make sure that you can process transactions really quickly. You don't have to worry about going bankrupt with things like just having tons and tons of transactions on your chain. So that's like necessary, but is it sufficient? I think the point that you brought up is actually really important about neutrality of infrastructure. We're seeing a lot of people get into the blockchain game because they're seeing excitement about the industry. The whole point of blockchain is to cut out middlemen and create neutral infrastructure so that if you're building on basically this decentralized database, you don't have to worry about whether or not a company's going to wake up one day and sunset the project because they don't believe in it. You don't have to worry about whether or not a country is going to sort of limit your project from getting access to their citizenry. You certainly don't want to worry about the chain waking up and deciding to jack up prices on you and just wholeheartedly basically like do rent seeking. And so neutral infrastructure is really, really critical to being able to work towards this global project, because otherwise we're just going back to the system that we have today by a different name. The last thing I'll say, though, for builders thinking about where to build, I'm a former founder. I think I'll found something again someday. The community that you have as a founder is so, so important, right? You're doing something really hard. You're building a company. You're chewing glass. And you want to be around people who are enthusiastic, who want to help you out. You want to be around a lot of people that are like that, right? You want to be able to go ask them for help. And you want to just really feel the energy. And I think the energy that is in this ecosystem is unlike anything else. There's a real sense that there's an economy being built here that's meaningful for people, that is global, that touches people of all stripes and is important to the world and also really fun. And it's being built here. And so I would say if you're looking for a chain to build on, come to an event. Breakpoint's an incredible event, but there's events all over the world, and you'll get a sense of what that ecosystem really feels like. Last thing I'll say, it's not only new builders that are building on Solana. You have, like I said, every major institution building on Solana, major payment companies, Visa, Fiserv, Western Union. And so if you want to build an ecosystem where you have the true option for interoperability and the opportunity to partner with some of these bigger players in the space, this is where you should do it.
Amazing.
Now, Marissa and I rattled off a bunch of stats about Abu Dhabi and the UAE as we started the show. Why was it important for Solana to show up here in the Middle East for Breakpoint this year?
Well, Solana is a really global community. My background's in foreign policy. I really thrive on working in global environments. It's very important to me. And like I said, I think it's a really core part of this mission that we're bringing everyone along. And so when we think about places to have Breakpoint, we want to make sure that we're making it accessible to the community writ large. So last year it was in Singapore. A couple of years before that was in Europe, basically the 3 sort of first years. And so I think making sure that we're being accessible to different parts of the community and making it really accessible, having them understand the world in different ways is really critical here. So obviously the UAE is a big capital for capital in the world, but also a lot of what's happening in industry. So if we're going to look for a different location to do it, this makes a lot of sense, right? Because you're right in the center of so many different parts of the world, and you're really attracting a new market to come here.
Amira, thank you so much for joining us at the desk and kicking off our live programming from Breakpoint. I'm sure we'll see you around the event.
Thank you so much for having me. This was fun.
Thank you.
That was Head of Strategic Partnerships at the Solana Foundation, Amira Valiani. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
From a small trading port to one of Asia's economic tigers, Hong Kong built a reputation on something rare: the ability to take fast-moving markets and give them structure. For half a century, global capital came here for one reason: Hong Kong knew how to turn frontier markets into functioning ones. Whether it was the first wave of Asian IPOs, the rise of multinational deal-making in the 90s, or the deep liquidity that defined the 2000s, Hong Kong made complexity investable. And now, the frontier has shifted again. Internet capital markets, a new system of finance being built at internet speed. And Hong Kong is once again doing what it does best, designing rules that invite innovation. This February, Solana Accelerate lands in Hong Kong, side by side with Consensus Hong Kong. We will bring founders, institutions, and policymakers into the same room, the same energy, the same opportunity, because Hong Kong turns experiments into industries. To get your tickets, head to solana.com/events. Solana Accelerate Hong Kong. See you soon.
CoinDesk Live. If you're just joining us, we are coming to you from Solana Breakpoint in Abu Dhabi. Now, prediction market platform Kalshi recently reached an $11 billion valuation and just announced tokenized betting contracts on Solana. Joining us now is head of crypto at Kalshi, John Wang. Hey, John.
Thanks for having me, guys. Great to be here.
Yeah, we're here in Abu Dhabi. We're at Solana Breakpoint. The conference started at, I think, around 9 or 10 this morning, so we're midday now. Talk to us a little bit about what you've been up to.
Well, yeah, I just had a tour around the place. They've really crushed it with the venue this year. I think every year Breakpoint gets bigger and bigger. It's just a sign of Solana growing. And I was just saying, this setup here is amazing as well. It looks like some sort of like ESPN desk.
Well, thank you. We love compliments here at the desk, so thank you for saying that. And you're right, this is the biggest Solana Breakpoint thus far. I think there's more than 6,000 attendees here, and we're really feeling the energy and the vibe, so it's been a good time.
So we would love to learn a little bit more about Kalshi's venture into the blockchain world, because originally it started off-chain, it's now come on-chain. Can you tell us a bit more about, I guess, like the difference between tokenized and regular contracts when we speak about prediction markets?
Yeah, of course. So I think Kalshi, many people view it as this like US-only off-chain app. And I think the next chapter of Kalshi is opening it up to become a global off-chain and on-chain platform for developers, for builders, and for users that are all around the world to utilize. And so we're really excited about this push with Solana and just our general tokenization contract push, where essentially there are these tokenization layers, in this case of Solana, DFlow and Jupiter, which are the largest order aggregators on Solana. They're building this infrastructure to allow the tokenization of predictions on Solana, to allow any user to permissionlessly trade in a crypto native way predictions. And then also from a builder standpoint, this gives builders access to the largest prediction market liquidity layer in the world. It gives them access and the ability to monetize any sort of application that they would want to build, ranging from pro trading terminals to AI agents and weather apps and verticalized front ends focused on culture markets, crypto markets. And then for Kalshi, what we get is billions of dollars of Solana liquidity, the most active trader user base in the world, and sort of like this new ecosystem of grassroots developers building on top of us.
For the user, what changes? When we look at how Kalshi operated before, and now we're looking at tokenized prediction markets, what's the difference for someone who's just using the app?
Right. I think the strategy here is really to meet the user where they are, to maximize convenience for them, and to make it super easy and fast to do it. And so really like the experience is very seamless for a user. We're trying to target the crypto native audience here, and I think another aspect of like a user experience difference would be the front ends that are being built on top of this prediction market tokenization layer would be markedly different and differentiated from the Kalshi one, which I think is kind of like a relatively basic and generalized user experience. These front ends that are being built on top could become like more niche front ends that really target specific user segments. For example, like if we have a bunch of weather gurus who are really deep into meteorology and weather statistics, and now people can build like an expert weather front end to trade prediction markets to predict what the weather might be, or whether a tornado or an earthquake might hit a specific region or city. Go after that user segment, give them all the data streams they want at the lowest latency, have like localized data feeds and really sophisticated charting and analytics that you wouldn't really quite be able to get on the sort of more basic or general Kalshi front end. And so we're really excited about those differentiated user experiences, as well as meeting crypto native users where they are.
So it's almost like creating a Kalshi ecosystem of its own in terms of the diversity of the products that builders can develop and customers can interact with. But then when we talk about it in the realms of blockchain and crypto, from what you were saying earlier, it sounds like we're basically bridging prediction markets closer to broader DeFi and that category overall. What does that stitch look like?
Yeah, and I think these tokens really are just normal tokens. And so they're integrated into DFlow and Jupyter's sort of API swapping suite in the same way that a normal front-end trading like any other SPL token on Solana would. And so these tokens actually could be used in DeFi later on, or just like even on day one. But I think we'll start seeing these new financial primitives forming around prediction markets. One example could be like collateralization and lending of prediction market positions to unlock the idle capital in like long-dated positions, so that people can kind of get more capital efficiency out of these prediction market positions. And we could also see development of like prediction market perps using Kalshi or price feeds as Oracle data, or AI agents being built around these frameworks. So I'm very excited about like the general sort of Cambrian explosion of stuff that you can build with DeFi on prediction markets.
We were talking a little bit about regulation earlier and how important it is for the progression of all the builders and firms in this space. I know CFTC, Kalshi has had a lot of wins in the US on the regulatory front, especially when it comes to the CFTC, but we're seeing state regulators now kind of put together this patchwork of regulation. Curious as to how you're looking at that, and do you see the federal win as the overarching thing for Kalshi? How are you dealing with what state regulators are looking at when it comes to prediction markets?
Yeah. Well, firstly, preface that I'm not on the legal team at Kalshi, but I think that we're very confident in our position. One of our edges is that we are like very pro-regulation in the sense that we're here to adopt regulation, make it better, work with regulators to figure out like what's right, what's wrong, and I think ultimately like federal regulations supersedes like state regulation when it comes to a national exchange such as ours, and we legalized event contracts in the United States and sort of brought this industry into the forefront, and we chose this path of working with regulators and did 3 years of legal work before actually launching a live product. So that's kind of the approach that we've been taking, and we're pretty confident in our position, and I think it's going to be an exciting few years now that we have like a very pro-crypto CFTC and SEC chair in place, and we've kind of been seeing every week there's more news on like the adoption of crypto in the CFTC and the SEC and them collaborating. I think just a few days ago, Chairman Pham announced that BTC, ETH, and USDC were enabled as collateral for FCMs, which includes prediction markets.
I want to talk about maintaining your first mover advantage just before we wrap up here, and your vision for the future of prediction markets. What's that vision you're building towards? Are we going to be interacting with prediction markets when we open up news sites, when we're on social media?
Right.
And how do you maintain that first mover advantage you have now as more prediction markets pop up after they've seen the amazing success that you've had?
Yeah, I think prediction markets, we've found every app to be kind of just knocking on our door to try and integrate it into it. And I think it's really great way to unlock like organic product growth, because every single event in the world, every news piece is relevant to prediction markets. You can spin up a market, people can put their skin in the game, and they become even more engaged with your application. And so I think that prediction markets and Kalshi will be everywhere in all the largest social media, news, sports apps in the world. We just announced a CNN and CNBC partnership the other day. I think it will accelerate in the crypto side of things as well with our tokenization layer. Yeah, I'm just super excited about like this kind of like viral growth flywheel that you can get from integrating prediction markets. And I think, just in general, like prediction markets are a new asset class, just like crypto 10 years ago. And so I think it's going to keep on growing.
I heard there's going to be some robots fighting later. Maybe we could spin up a prediction market for who's going to win. I don't know if we can do it that quickly, but maybe you can help us.
I saw that boxing ring. Yeah, I think they've said that they've been interested in prediction markets before. So maybe we can do that.
Maybe we can do that. All right, John, thank you so much for joining us at the desk. Congratulations with all the success at Kalshi, and I'm sure we'll see you around the event.
Thank you very much.
That was John Wang, Kalshi's head of crypto. We are going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
From a small trading port to one of Asia's economic tigers, Hong Kong built a reputation on something rare: the ability to take fast-moving markets and give them structure. For half a century, global capital came here for one reason: Hong Kong knew how to turn frontier markets into functioning ones. Whether it was the first wave of Asian IPOs, the rise of multinational deal-making in the 90s, or the deep liquidity that defined the 2000s, Hong Kong made complexity investable. And now, the frontier has shifted again. Internet capital markets, a new system of finance being built at internet speed. And Hong Kong is once again doing what it does best: designing rules that invite innovation. This February, Solana Accelerate lands in Hong Kong, side by side with Consensus Hong Kong. We will bring founders, institutions, and policymakers into the same room, the same energy, the same opportunity, because Hong Kong turns experiments into industries. To get your tickets, head to solana.com/events. Solana Accelerate Hong Kong. See you soon.
Welcome back to CoinDesk Live. We are coming to you from Solana Breakpoint in Abu Dhabi. Our next guest is here with us now, IONET's Chief Growth Officer, Jack Collier. Hey, Jack.
Hello, nice to see you.
Nice to have you here. We've been talking all about the event. We're about midday on day one. What have you gotten up to?
Well, we have an activation along with BitRobot, Frodo bots. So they're the fighting robots downstairs.
We've been obsessed with those all day.
Well, those the models running on those robots were trained on IO.net infrastructure. So
I think that bridges us really wonderfully into the first question about IONET is, what is it?
What is IONET? Well, IONET is an open AI platform. We have two main products. The first product is IO Cloud, and that is one of the largest decentralized networks of GPUs. So obviously GPUs are really important when it comes to AI because you're hosting, you need to train a lot of models, you need to be able to use a lot of compute power, and often that is very expensive, hard to get hold of, controlled by very few centralized providers. Think Microsoft, think Google. And how we solve that at IO.net is that we are a network where people can opt in their supply onto the network, whether that is just a GPU, one GPU you have at home, all the way through to like large data centers. And then what we do is we find demand for those GPUs, and we actually sell that to end consumers. And because we do that using a blockchain, we're able to offer it in a cheaper, faster, and more flexible way in comparison to the large providers. So that's the first product, and then we have IO Intelligence, which is our inference product, and that is where we offer open source models, so think like Kimi K2 and things like that. We host that on our GPUs, and we serve that to customers so that they can customize those models, integrate them within the products and services they have, and still benefit from all of the GPU advantages that IO Cloud has.
So very much seeing the convergence of two rising industries, crypto and blockchain, and AI, but also very much focusing on the friction point when it comes to the actual compute crunch that we've been seeing throughout the course of the year, and the multiple outages as well.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of the customers that we have, often they try the centralized providers first. I mean, a lot of our customers aren't even in Web3. I mean, a lot are, a lot aren't, and that's one of the biggest things with Deepin. I think it's the next thing in crypto to come out where we actually can bridge that gap and actually offer real value to people. But they often start with that, Web 2 experience, and they often can't get hold of the latest devices. Like trying to get an H200 a few months ago was just almost impossible. Often having to be locked into long contracts, which often you don't need. You're using GPUs sort of in bursts. You're not using it constantly over the time period. And often they charge through the nose. And so, people are looking for novel new ways to be able to solve that problem. And that's why we came up with what we have at IO.net.
I want to come back to the robot example for just one moment. Talk to us a little bit about practically how the robots were trained based off data on IONET.
Sure. So Frodobots would use, they have large data sets that they need to train these models on. And you have to keep iterating on the model. You have to feed it all this information, and it learns and learns and learns. But the learning process takes a lot of time, and it's intensive. And so, like I say, if they were to do it on AWS, it would have cost them significantly more than using distributed compute like IO.net. I think we have a case study on our website. I think they mentioned they saved 92% on their compute costs just by using our products and service, and that's because they will be able to use a variety of different devices to train their models. Like they could use consumer-grade 4090s and pay a fraction of the cost than they would if they used premium chipsets, but they could also have used the premium chipsets at a discount as well. And so it just means that for whatever situation you're in, whether you're time sensitive and you want to train a model really quickly, and so you might want to pay a little more for a premium device, or if you're not time sensitive and you want to do it as cheaply as possible, then you would use some of the lower grade tech to be able to do that. And and that's the beauty of this sort of decentralized product and Deepin in general, is that it's just very flexible for people. So if you do have a sensitivity like that, then it can be catered for.
Marissa and I were talking earlier about product market fit, and I think we're seeing in our conversations that we're having here, we're not trying to make something fit that doesn't. You said you have a lot of Web 2 customers who've found you because the Web 2 solutions, the centralized solutions, just don't work for them, and I think it's incredible to see examples like this come to fruition. We don't have to over-explain the tech. We don't have to market that all of this is happening on the blockchain. We just have to say there's something out there, there's a solution that works for you, and you don't need to know how it works on the back end.
No, but you should be able to explain how some of those USPs come to life. I mean, I have a few people that say work in the energy sector, and it's kind of like, oh, well, we know you could save you 75% on your GPU costs. And often the first point is, I can't trust that. So I think everyone in Deepin, everyone in Web3 has a job to be able to confidently and calmly explain what it is that they're doing and how they're doing it, and I think often Web3 is tainted with, negative connotations, and actually we need to go back to basics. We need to go back, no, this is how the tech works. It's secure, it's flexible, it's definitely the future infrastructure that a lot of the web money, assets is going to sit on, and here's how it works. And I feel like it's on all of us to be able to explain that.
Yeah, and I think we're also seeing a pivotal part of the conversation shifting, where we're not trying to sell decentralization rather than have it as a characteristic feature of the stack.
That's right.
And so you can actually pitch the value proposition, which is the efficiency.
That's right.
But to your point, a lot of people might look at it and say, well, it sounds too good to be true. So how much of IONET's process is around educating people about what the bottlenecks truly were versus, I guess, the surface level understanding that the market had prior to this potential and this possibility?
Yeah, we spend a lot of time in generating engaging content series around how the technology works. Like, for example, often we get asked, well, you have all of these devices on your network, where do they come from? How does it work? And we explain, well, anyone can opt into the network. How do you secure the quality of that? Well, people put a stake in it. They say, well, I'm going to put my block of 4090s onto this network, and I'm going to stake whatever it is, 1,000 IO against it. And so what that does is it disincentivizes people for lying about what their chipset is. So it's like, yeah, this is a 4090, it is based in wherever, Canada, and it is going to have these set of performance characteristics. And if it doesn't, then there's a penalization on the network. So we no longer have to trust the centralized provider to say this is what it is, is actually more trustworthy in the fact that it's the trustless system, And so, we do articles on that. We often showcase our case studies. We've talked about Frodo bots. We have case studies with Leonardo AI, which is a Canva company. It's a Web 2 product. And they've saved, I think, flexibility and costs were big things on their side. And so we're just trying to tell what the future should look like through the stories and through the eyes of our customer, and just trying to explain things in layman terms to them.
Jack, it's been such a pleasure having you at the desk. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. That was IONET's Chief Growth Officer, Jack Collier. If you are just joining us, we are coming to you live from Breakpoint in Abu Dhabi. This is Solana's flagship conference, and I believe it's the biggest Breakpoint that we've seen so far. We're going to continue bringing you conversations right here from the desk. But first, let's take a look at what's going on in the news this morning. The U.S. Senate's crypto market structure bill is hitting a major wall. Negotiations are getting messy, with the White House shutting down recent proposals and Democrats issuing demands regarding financial stability, market integrity, ethics, and more. Despite GOP claims that the bill is ready, senior Democrats are blocking a markup next week. The clock is ticking, though. The 2025 Senate calendar ends next week. If this spills into January, lawmakers face the pressure of midterm elections and a looming government shutdown deadline on January 30th. A government shutdown may further delay any progress, as 2025's record-breaking shutdown did. Our second story today, major players in crypto are getting a seat at the regulatory table. CEOs from firms like Gemini, Polymarket, and Bullish, the parent company of CoinDesk, have joined the CFTC's Innovation Council to help steer future market developments. It is a parting move from acting chair Caroline Pham. In her final days leading the agency, she says she is grateful for the executive's vision as the commission works to, quote, hit the ground running to prepare for the future and beyond. The timing is critical. The agency is expected to get its permanent leadership very soon, with the Senate set to vote on President Trump's nominee, Mike Seelig. And our last story today, Bhutan is bringing the gold standard to the blockchain. The kingdom has debuted TER, or TER, as a token built on Solana and fully backed by physical gold, issued through Bhutan's new Gilefu Mindfulness City Special Zone. The token is designed to give global investors on-chain transparency for a traditional asset. This follows a similar launch by Kyrgyzstan, highlighting a growing trend where smaller nations are using crypto to modernize their economies and attract foreign capital. Those are your top 3 stories for the morning. Follow all of the latest news headlines on CoinDesk.com, and we're going to get right back into it. All right, Marissa, the conversations just keep on going. I think we had some really insightful discussions this morning from within the Solana ecosystem. And I love that Deepin is coming back. Deepin is such an important part of this industry. And I feel like the narrative has taken a little bit of has been put on the back burner a little bit. It hasn't been as flashy as some of the other narratives. And I love that we're talking about it again.
I think what we're essentially seeing is that when attention sort of faded or Deepin was less in the spotlight, that didn't detract builders from focusing on that as a sector of the ecosystem. And now we're basically seeing the fruits of all of their labor. I think what I love about the Deepin conversation is seeing that convergence with AI in particular, that last conversation obviously being top of mind. It's fascinating because, again, I think unless you're very well versed in AI as an industry, we aren't as exposed to the bottlenecks that AI developers are currently facing, and seeing how blockchain and Deepin sort of provides a solution for that, I think is incredible. Because again, it goes back to our theme of product market fit.
It's really interesting you bring that up. I've spoken to a lot of people on a number of our shows about how crypto has kind of had, that, I don't want to say failure to start because it hasn't, but it needed that extra push. And
the cold start problem.
Yes, AI really has presented a real problem for blockchain to solve, and I think that's what we're seeing come together. I think the two really need each other, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
It goes to part of the conversation of when we look at blockchain and crypto beyond the realms of finance and more of this decentralized fabric to what we could consider, next generation internet. I think what AI has done is point at the pressure points that mean that our current infrastructure cannot support this next wave of technological evolution. So we've also seen, as the emergence of hot storage layers. We've seen this conversation around, neo GPUs, alternative means of processing compute, and the high demand for compute. how many countless cloud outages have we seen this year? And blockchain solution providers are basically coming up and saying, I know the exact solution, I've already built it, we just need to start using it.
I think that's the one of the challenges. We just need to start using it. We're so used to using these centralized platforms. In many cases, there are large contracts with these centralized platforms. There are large companies. There are huge processes to making a decision to switch from something a company has been using for decades to something that maybe has only been around for a year or two. And so I look forward to seeing how firms look at marketing to grab market share and how users make the decision to switch, and if they make the decision to switch.
I do see it across two domains. One, the sunk cost fallacy, because there are egress costs that make it difficult for people to switch provider. And also, we can't ignore the fact that as an industry, we do still have a lot of stigma attached as to our credibility. Despite incredible and innovative solutions being built, there is still this, ooh, do I want to venture into blockchain territory and take that quote-unquote risk, even though the benefits are tangible, they're clear, and the value proposition is so much better than what they are currently at the mercy of. But again, getting people to make that critical step is a scary one. And that's what it's going to take.
All right, more to come when it comes to DePIN later on in this broadcast, but let's get to our next guest now, who is head of crypto partnerships at WorldPay, a leading global payments processing company that handles massive transaction volumes for millions of merchants worldwide. Ahmed Zifsaf, hello.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. We are sitting here in Abu Dhabi at Solana Breakpoint. Talk to us a little bit about why it's important for you to be here and why the Middle East is an important region for you to be talking about WorldPay.
Well, first, most importantly, I grew up here, so going to primary school here, being able to return back and seeing all the growth and changes that's happened over the decades is really exciting. When I think about the Middle East, it has a lot of trends that really capture the imagination of the entire world. So in terms of what they're doing with CBDCs, what they're doing with real-time payments, all of the sort of crypto-native companies that are coming and moving here and really establishing themselves very formidably. It's just a very exciting time in the crypto industry. Outside of that, WorldPay was one of the first companies, international companies, to be able to come to the UAE as a non-bank and have an acquiring license. So we're able to offer our global services in the UAE legally, and one of the first companies to be able to do that. So I would say as a whole, there's a lot of exciting things from a trend perspective, as well as from just a general commercial perspective of why we're here today and why we're excited to participate in Solana Breakpoint.
A lot of crypto-native payment solutions have been built over the past year. I would actually argue it's probably one of the dominant themes within the industry thus far. But what makes WorldPay basically primed for the position of integrating crypto payments into its infrastructure? Is it distribution? Is it just scale? What is it?
I would say it's both of those things, and it's a very interesting question because 10 years ago, a lot of what WorldPay focused on was how do we bring traditional payments to crypto companies? When you go on Coinbase, how do you buy with credit card? When you go to all these exchanges, how do you do that? Today, in my role, I get to do kind of the opposite. How do you bring all of these inventions, innovations to the Web2 world, the big governments, the big airlines, the global companies? So I would say when I look at what WorldPay's advantages are, it's, yes, we have distribution to global companies that are doing massive scale. We do $2.5 trillion in payments volume. That being said, there's also an impetus for us to innovate, to provide the very best services. A lot of talk about stable coins, how do we get capital efficiency to increase with use of yield-bearing stables? How do we increase the speed at which you can get your funds? Things like that I think are really important for us to focus on and sort of where I see WorldPay's role today and sort of in the next 2 to 3 years.
You mentioned stables there, and that leads me to my question. When we talk about crypto payments, are we largely talking about stable coins for quicker, faster payments worldwide? Or are you also considering, like, I don't know, me going to the store down the street and paying with Doge?
Yeah, I mean, I think you ultimately want to be able to offer optionality. That being said, I think UAE is a great sort of microcosm of what it looks like worldwide. So the UAE, I think stables are like the majority of what people are using or accepting or paying with, more than a Bitcoin or any other digital asset. And I think it's something that people are more familiar with because it's a digital dollar, a digital dirham. These are things that we're all sort of familiar with. A lot of applications today even obfuscate the fact that it's crypto. So I think it's a lot easier as an on-ramp into the crypto ecosystem as well as an on-ramp to be able to do cool payment things.
You mentioned that pendulum swing where originally you were trying to implement conventional payment solutions into crypto and now sort of it's going the opposite way. Is that because you were responding to a market appetite for crypto that you wanted to service? Or what was the catalyst that really drove that implementation?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is merchant demand. You have companies all over the world that want to be able to do treasury better, and with stables, you mentioned AI. Even it's like there's a lot of new innovations to kind of improve what that looks like to have an optimized treasury system. There's companies in parts of the world where they want access to dollar that they normally can't get access to dollar. It's much more difficult. So this is another avenue in which we can kind of provide for them this type of service via our global platform. So I think there's a lot of advantages in that case. There's, of course, companies that just want to experiment. They want to participate in sort of what is this exciting trend in payments. But they see the value almost immediately because at the end of the day, this is a margins type business and you're improving margins.
You mentioned yield-bearing stables there, and I want to talk a little bit about that because I think it's kind of interesting. Tell me about your perspective on yield-bearing stable coins from a merchant's perspective, because for so long, being able to accept different kinds of payments has been a cost center for merchants, right? It costs them money. But now with yield-bearing stables, they have the potential to have a new revenue generating stream or at least break even. Talk to me a little bit about that and what kind of demand. Are merchants even thinking this way?
I would say it's like that's where I probably spend most of my days, is having those types of conversations with treasurers of large companies, things like that. So it's definitely top of mind for them. I would say we're still probably early in the adoption curve where you might not recognize, that some stables don't have a yield-bearing component. You might have assumed that they do, but vast majority of stable coins today that people are using do not. I think that will change over the next 3-4 years. I think it'll be table stakes to have real-time payments and stablecoin yield sort of on idle balances. But I would say there's definitely a learning curve in terms of understanding where that yield comes from. I think a lot of products like proof of reserve are important so people know how healthy is this stable. I think things like the Clarity and Genius Act do a lot in terms of regulating what this looks like, what exactly is a stable coin, how can you use it. So I think all of those things will improve sort of the knowledge as well as sort of the adoption of these types of assets. But for me, especially talking with these companies, it's very much a no-brainer. You have idle balances, you want to be able to earn yield at every sort of area. It's no longer a cost center, to your point. As a payments person, we don't like to view ourselves as a cost center. We're a value additive service. But that being said, this does improve sort of what the pricing we can offer or the value that we can offer because of the fact that there's a revenue component to it all.
You mentioned that the UAE is sort of this beautiful microcosm for the progress that you are seeing. You mentioned the digital dirham, obviously US dollar stablecoins. How are you seeing this projected on more of a global level and the appetites across other markets?
For stables specifically, or?
Just in terms of the integration and more seamless crypto payments.
Yeah, I would say it's right now fragmented. And it's competitive. You have major markets all creating their own sort of networks, their own, some are centralized, some are decentralized, some are programmable, some are interoperable, some are not. So I would say right now it's definitely fragmented and competitive. But I think what the UAE is doing is providing, the UAE is I like to view it as like the Silk Road hub of modern times. You have cross-border payments and remittances and volumes per capita that you don't really see elsewhere. Those are the two major use cases for stables today in terms of real-time payments, being able to swap between currencies. So I think the UAE has a very interesting place to kind of show the world what does good regulation look like, what does a central bank produce in terms of its infrastructure to help its businesses sort of thrive. I think countries like Singapore are adopting a very much similar approach. But I think these types of economies have a much better advantage than others just because of the fact that they have very sophisticated infrastructure that they can deploy without legacy systems holding them back.
So their market readiness has primed them for this opportunity over other markets.
Exactly.
Ahmed, thank you so much for joining us at the desk. It was a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
That was Ahmed Zifzaf, Head of Crypto Partnerships at WorldPay. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, Anthony Scaramucci, the Mooch, joins us next.
From a small trading port to one of Asia's economic tigers, Hong Kong built a reputation on something rare: the ability to take fast-moving markets and give them structure. For half a century, global capital came here for one reason: Hong Kong knew how to turn frontier markets into functioning ones. Whether it was the first wave of Asian IPOs, the rise of multinational deal-making in the 90s, or the deep liquidity that defined the 2000s, Hong Kong made complexity investable. And now, the frontier has shifted again. Internet capital markets, a new system of finance being built at internet speed. And Hong Kong is once again doing what it does best, designing rules that invite innovation. This February, Solana Accelerate lands in Hong Kong, side by side with Consensus Hong Kong. We will bring founders, institutions, and policymakers into the same room, the same energy, the same opportunity, because Hong Kong turns experiments into industries. To get your tickets, head to solana.com/events. Solana Accelerate Hong Kong. See you soon.
CoinDesk Live. We are coming to you from Solana Breakpoint. Let's bring our next guest to the desk now, founder and managing partner at Skybridge Capital and author of Solana Rising, Anthony Scaramucci. Hello.
Hey, it's good to be back with you.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
It's good to have you here. It's always such a blast when you come on the show. I
try to make it real.
I know. You got the hot
I'm
takes.
the only person at Solana Breakpoint wearing a tie right now.
Yeah.
Maybe 3 security guards and me, but it's okay.
How does that feel? I mean, you think that...
I feel like I'm a senior citizen here, but go ahead.
All right, let's talk about Solana Rising. How long has it been on the market? It's been just a few days.
Yeah, December 9th, so I guess 2 days. Amazon, it got to the top of the list of new releases for investment management books, investment strategy, so that was gratifying. And it seems like it's selling very well, and I think it also speaks to the Solana ecosystem that people are buying the book. I think the Solana believers don't need the book, but I think they like the book to give out to their friends who may be skeptics and not yet in the crypto pool like the rest of us.
So what was the core motivation behind focusing on Solana in particular and sort of framing it as this next generation operating system?
Well, full disclosure, I have a large personal holding in Solana. I have it on the firm's balance sheet. We have it in investors. I'm a large multi-coin investor. Kyle Samani wrote the introduction to the book, and I thought it was very important to explain to investors. So we have a whole bandwidth of investors. A lot of them are in my demography. And they're skeptics and they're sort of Luddites as it relates to blockchain technology. And I thought it was very important to lay out the story of Solana, but also include the narrative of Anatoly and Raj, how they put it together, what they were thinking about, and what the use cases are, and the bandwidth and the success of Solana. So, for me, I guess maybe my first Solana investment in 2021, but I think we're still so early. And if you just look at the penetration, we just got our first Solana ETF, first staking ETF, BSOL. And so it's just a sign of very, very early. I wanted to get the messaging out there of what it was to the most amount of people. You can't really do it in a research paper, but it's about 175 pages, just tells the story of Solana.
The first Solana ETF also had an incredible debut, not only amongst crypto ETFs, but ETFs on a whole. So I think you're absolutely correct there. I know that you said previously that Solana will flip Ethereum. Talk to me about timeline there.
Well, I think it will flip Ethereum. That doesn't mean Ethereum's going down or anything like that. I think there's going to be market share for Ethereum. I think they could both grow. But I think from a market capitalization perspective, I think Solana will end up growing faster. I think if you just look at and I do write a lot about this in the book, the comparative analysis. Again, I'm a multi-chain sort of a person, so people get mad at me because I happen to like Avalanche. I do like Ethereum. And people say, well, I guess they want me to be chain monogamous, but I'm not chain monogamous. In fact, who is chain monogamous? And so, is it okay to be not chain monogamous?
I think so. I think
polychainery?
I think that we're all a little bit.
It's not it's not an amorous thing. It just has to do with the realities of investing. It's like owning a lot of stocks in your portfolio. But to me, I just think that it is the fastest growing chain. It has the most activity of like the top 50 chains combined. It's got lots of use cases, lots of versatility. It's easy to develop on. And it's very low fees to transact on. And it's got great tokenomics if you want to stake your Solana like I do, or if you want to buy BSOL, which is a staking ETF. So There's so many different things that make me believe that it will flip Ethereum. Having said all of that, that's not me saying anything negative about Ethereum. It's really talking about the promise of Solana.
So to go back to your book for a moment, and as you said, you don't really need to convince anyone within the industry that blockchain very much has a huge amount of potential for the future, as it's currently demonstrating now. But when you do speak to people from more conventional finance, conventional regulations, what is the core argument that really kind of breaks their paradigm of thinking that actually starts to unlock that conversation? Because I think previously we had a lot of people shutting it down at the first pass.
I think it's a separate topic. It's a little more philosophical. This is my 37-year observation of Wall Street and regulation. I think the first indication is fear. And then the second indication is lack of knowledge. I think one of the brilliant parts of Solana, by starting the Solana Policy Institute, they're out there educating people and trying to reduce the fear. And then I think once you get to the education process, you understand the efficacy of something like Solana, and you're sitting there saying, so wait a minute, we're going to be able to save lots of transaction costs. There's going to be great security on this network. There's ease of use. There's permissionless aspects and features to the network. In the process of doing the book, in doing research, it depends on who you talk to, but there's between $3.5 and $4 trillion of transaction verification fees globally around the world per year. That includes credit card fees, wire fees, bank administration fees, all these different things. And if you're telling me that Solana could help you bypass that, think about the economic innovation that could get it unleashed. So step one, reduce the fear. Step two, educate people on what it can do and where the economic innovation is. And then you can probably bring people over to the appropriate regulatory perspective. But this has been true forever. You got, guys, all of us are old enough to remember the resistance to Uber. Okay, the ride-sharing application, better technology than the local taxi cab. It didn't fully displace taxi cabs, but it did create a proliferation of ride-sharing globally, and it made it better for the consumer. But the taxi cab administration didn't want it. The local mayors and the local authorities didn't want it. But who wanted it was the people. And so I stipulate in the book, one of the axioms about life, when the technology is better, even if there's regulatory resistance, it will get adopted.
You personally invest in Solana. The company invests in Solana. What allocation of the portfolio are we talking about here?
Well, for our balance sheet, it's probably 60% of the balance sheet. You know, we have north of a 9-figure balance sheet at Skybridge, and so Solana makes up the largesse of it. I would say for the portfolio, you know, I don't hold me this. I don't have the portfolio right in front of me. Probably 6%, 7%.
Okay, and I got to ask you, you know,
Yep.
I love a price prediction.
Yep.
What's your projection for Sol?
So, you know, I've been right about Bitcoin, but I've been wrong about timing. I said Bitcoin would get to 100,000, but if you'd asked me that, I thought it was going to happen at the end of 2022. But of course, I got the regulation wrong. That's because I was actually reading the administrative law. If you pass the Bitcoin futures ETF, it would be logical and consistent that you'd have the cash or spot ETF a few months after it. But we had, you know, probably the worst SEC chairman in the SEC's history, Gary Gensler, just for no reason, arbitrary and capricious reasons, as what the judge said about him, blocking it. So that delayed the Bitcoin price going to 100,000. Solana is a little bit different of a case. I think Solana, until you get the Clarity Act passed in the United States, you're probably going to not get the full utilization of tokenization. So Solana should have a good year next year if we can get that done. And so could it be $300-400 by the end of next year? Sure. Is Solana go to $1,000 over the next 5 years? I really do believe that, and obviously I put my money where my mouth is.
Do you think Clarity passes next year? We heard this morning that it's getting a little bit messy with the latest Democrat draft, looking like we're not going to see a markup next week. It's almost the end of the year. We're heading into midterms.
Yeah.
Does Clarity get pushed to the back burner?
You know, David Sachs says no. I think he's a very effective guy. I think he's very capable. I think younger Democrats would be making a huge mistake if they go in that direction. I think the crypto lobby proved itself in 2024. They knocked out some big incumbents that were anti-crypto, sent a message to people. I don't know a lot of anti-crypto voters. I understand the Democrats' position because it's opposed to the president. And I think the president did hurt the industry by having a meme coin launch several hours prior to his inauguration, 2 meme coins. I don't necessarily think that helped him with his political adversaries. And so, by and large, the president, again, I want to be very fair to him and his administration, they have been better for crypto, certainly better than a Harris or a Biden administration. But I think that sort of stuff slowed us down. If I was at this desk with you at Breakpoint in Singapore last year, I would have said we would have gotten both of those pieces of legislation passed. But I do think that meme coin introduction slowed down the Democrats. And you saw that petition that was signed recently where there's a lot of different groups that are against it and trying to block it. And they're doing that for political reasons more than that they're doing it for utility reasons. So the industry's still fragile. We got to get the regulation to be post-partisan or even non-partisan, if you will, sort of transformational. And we don't have it there yet, but we have to continue to work on that. But if you ask me, is it going to get passed or not, yes or no, I think it will, despite the current opposition. I think lots of Democrats don't want to go into the midterms with the crypto PACs gunning for them.
I got to ask you your Bitcoin prediction now.
Okay.
Where is it going? By end of, don't say something crazy.
10 million.
Don't say something crazy.
Look, like I said, I've been always wrong about timing.
Okay.
And so I'm going to wear egg on my face. Bitcoin did get to 100,000, but of course, we had to wait till after the ETF and after a clear sign from the government. I think we've had a decent year in Bitcoin in a weird way because we've had lots of consolidation. Some of the OG sellers, sort of a circulation of that Bitcoin into institutional hands, I think is ultimately positive long term for Bitcoin. But I still maintain 150 to 200,000. I would have said to you 6 months ago we would have gotten there by the end of the year. But I would have also made the assumption that the Clarity and Market Structure Act would be passed. Mm-hmm. If we get those acts passed in the first half of next year, I do see that as a likelihood. I also think we're going to have a more friendly Federal Reserve next year as it relates to interest rates, will also help the price of Bitcoin. So I'm going to stick with my $150,000 to $200,000 prediction. I just got it wrong in terms of timing.
All right, Anthony, and before we let you go, we got to just do a little bit of self-promotion here. CoinDesk's Consensus and Salt have partnered for a one-day institutional summit in Hong Kong.
Am I going to see you in Hong Kong?
You are going to see me in Hong Kong.
Am I allowed to go live in Hong Kong?
Yeah, we're going to do this again in Hong Kong.
Are you going to give me a phone book so I look taller on TV than I currently do?
I think we can work it out.
Makeup,
everything. I'm going to talk to my agent about all this.
Yeah, you got to talk to your agent.
Yes,
we'll work something out for you for Hong Kong.
Okay.
Talk to us about Hong Kong. Why is it important for SALT to show up in this way for institutions in the region?
Well, first of all, I'm gratified. First of all, you guys do an amazing job with Consensus. I was at Consensus in Toronto. I've been to Consensus in Texas. I've been following the Consensus troop around the world. And Hong Kong is one of the most exciting cities, a crypto-friendly city. Tom and I are close. I thought it'd be a good idea to fuse some of our content together, bring some of the people that we could bring to bear at Consensus. And I'm a big believer in collaboration. I don't think conferences need to compete with each other. If anything, I think it's the goal for all of us to raise the standards in the industry, raise the awareness of the industry. I believe in a rising tide, lifting all boats in our industry. Tom believes in that too. So I'm bullish, and I'm excited to be in Hong Kong with you. And I expect to be on the show.
You'll be on the show, don't worry.
Okay.
And we'll get hair and makeup sorted out for you. Don't worry.
I'm going to hold you to it.
We may even get a green room
We are
for you.
videoing this show right now,
We are,
so
so
I'm going to hold you to it.
You'll be even more beautiful now.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I need positive reinforcement.
Anthony, it is always a pleasure. Thanks
Great
so much
to be
for
on with
joining
you
us.
guys.
Thank you so much.
That was Skybridge founder and managing partner, Anthony Scaramucci. We are going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
From a small trading port to one of Asia's economic tigers, Hong Kong built a reputation on something rare: the ability to take fast-moving markets and give them structure. For half a century, global capital came here for one reason: Hong Kong knew how to turn frontier markets into functioning ones. Whether it was the first wave of Asian IPOs, the rise of multinational deal-making in the 90s, or the deep liquidity that defined the 2000s, Hong Kong made complexity investable. And now, the frontier has shifted again. Internet capital markets, a new system of finance being built at internet speed. and Hong Kong is once again doing what it does best, designing rules that invite innovation. This February, Solana Accelerate lands in Hong Kong, side by side with Consensus Hong Kong. We will bring founders, institutions, and policymakers into the same room, the same energy, the same opportunity, because Hong Kong turns experiments into industries. To get your tickets, head to solana.com/events. Solana Accelerate Hong Kong. See you soon.
This is CoinDesk Live, and we are in Abu Dhabi. I'm Jen Sanasi, here with my co-host Marissa True. Marissa, I'm having a great time.
I'm having a phenomenal time. I'm learning so much on the go.
I know. That's my favorite part about doing these events, is to learn so much on the go. It's the retention that I'm still working on.
It's a bit of a question mark.
That I'm still working on the retention part.
Well, hopefully over the next 2 minutes we can prove what we've retained. And I think the main takeaway for me has been regulation is still very, very much top of mind, despite the sheer amount of progress that we've actually seen in the industry. What did you think?
I think that's exactly right. You know, I explore this on a show that I host on CoinDesk, a regulation and policy focused show. We've had so much progress, especially in the United States, and we love to talk about that. I don't want to discredit that. It has been amazing, but there's still so much more work to do. And so while we celebrate, I really encourage the builders in the industry, the executives in the industry, to pay attention to what's going on and understand how to operate in this. This really it still is a regulatory gray area.
I think what's particularly interesting, though, is that, you know, obviously we're in the UAE, we're talking a lot about US legislation, we're talking about crypto friendliness in areas like Hong Kong, like in Singapore. And I think what it's really revealing to us is that the regulatory conversation is very, very different across different markets. But we tend to still default back to the US. The US is sort of this guiding North Star when it comes to the proliferation of this technology and finance worldwide.
It's interesting you say that, because we were just talking to Anthony Scaramucci about the progression in the United States. That's only happened in the last year, but in places like Abu Dhabi and places like Dubai, it's been much, much longer. It's been much more established, and sometimes I think we forget that.
It's strangely been quieter as much as faster. I think you've seen a lot of progressive regulation in these markets that have just amounted to you seeing crypto businesses emerge in those markets, rather than there being this overemphasis on the political conversation that's being had. From an outsider perspective, because I'm not American, I would say that so much of the focus in the US is because it's such a bipartisan issue, and that's why it's been such a vocal thing, while in other markets it's very much a law is passed, and then suddenly you see the result of that through the businesses that have emerged.
For our audience who hasn't met you yet, you are based in Singapore, and so yes. I look forward later on in the broadcast to talking to you about Singapore and talking to you about some of the progress that's been made there, because some of our guests here at this desk has mentioned Singapore as a big Web3 hub, as a leader when it comes to crypto regulation, and so let's unpack that a little bit later. But now let's get to our next guest. We are welcoming Ran Goldie to the show, SVP of Payments and Network at Fireblocks. Goldie, I had to introduce you with your full name. I can't get it out of me. You deserve to be introduced by your full name, but we all know you as Goldie.
Thank you, and thank you for having me again. I think our last interview was probably in Rio.
It was.
And it's amazing how we're just moving from, I guess, one place that's moving forward spectacularly, like Brazil right now with cross-border and remittance, to now UAE, as you have now stated. Regulation here has been happening for a while, even though, like you said, we're talking a lot about the US. But this place is exploding, right? Like tokenization, real-world assets, issuance of stable coins, they have been here even before the Genius Act. And I think that this is the reason, obviously, Solana Breakpoint's happening here. And I'm sure we'll see more events happening in Abu Dhabi over the next year or two.
I want to hear more about that explosion from your perspective. I know Fireblocks' customer base has experienced year-over-year growth in the UAE in the past 3 years. Talk to us a little bit about what you're seeing in the region.
Yeah, so this region is very much I would say, actually, it's very much different than any other region in the world. If most regions in the world have followed the typical pattern of, the first wave was crypto trading and speculative trading, and then came payments and stable coins, and now we're seeing the third wave in the horizon, which is tokenization. In the UAE, they actually started with the stable coins and tokenization. They almost like went over there. There wasn't a lot of support here for speculative trading for many reasons, I think. And I think that the regulators in the UAE decided a long time ago they want to make this place a hub of the region, right? Abu Dhabi specifically, obviously Dubai as well. And what we see here more than any other place in the world is the banks, right? If I would go now even to Singapore, if I would go to the US, yes, it's early days from them. Here, there's more than 30 banks, I believe, that are already live, right?
Wow.
We have 160 clients across this region, from banks to fintechs, and they are leading here in this region with tokenization of stablecoins, with real-world assets, with money market funds being created, a lot of interesting structures that we're only now seeing happening outside. They were actually the pioneers globally.
So would you argue then that the UAE has sort of leapfrogged or just cherry-picked the elements of the industry that they were particularly bullish on and sort of discarding the rest of it until that product market fit moment really happened?
Yeah, I think it's exactly right. And I think that unlike other places, I think that the UAE sort of, they saw the opportunity in creating a friendly regulation, right? And again, the US is obviously leading the global sentiment, and that plugs into what's happening here. Because obviously, if the US was still in its negative sentiment mode, then it doesn't really matter what's happening around the world. But now there's also positive sentiment, and there's a good ground framework here to create, real products. That comes together, and that creates that explosion where companies outside can come here now, and they have the remit to do something here.
Talk to us about the conversations you're having with clients here. What are they demanding? How are they thinking about things, especially as we move into 2026? What are we going to see?
So I think that, in 24, we crossed the chasm, right? In 24, we had ETFs, right? That really helped us. But we also saw incumbents like Stripe, coming into the world of stable coins with the acquisition of Bridge for $1.1 billion, right? In 25, with administration change, obviously, Genius Act, whatever, we saw incumbents stepping in. So the MoneyGrams of the world, right? Those type of clients, the Western Union, right? I think what we'll see in 26 is incumbents doubling and tripling down on cross-border, on remittance payments. And what I think we'll see at the tail end of 26 and probably more in 27 are actually more and more banks stepping in with tokenization of real-world assets. I think that if you would ask me where would we be in 26, I would say probably the market cap for stablecoins would triple. And I think that the amount of on-chain products would probably go 10x.
It's really interesting because in some ways you could consider 2025 this flood of institutional adoption, institutional capital, and it's created this sort of double-edged sword or this tricky conversation within the crypto native communities who, one, argue that this might dilute that decentralized ethos because these centralized companies are entering the field and we risk sort of devolving back to our original state. And those that really see it as a symbol of progression. So how do you see that balance?
So, look, I was always on the side that, and this is why I guess I don't get invited to a lot of DeFi parties, is that, that regulation will be what's, the driving force of adoption globally. And I think that, yes, there's something in what you're saying, as this gets more regulated, as this gets more institutionalized, then the DeFi world will slowly maybe subside a bit. But I think that it's a viable possibility, but what I think will happen, what I hope will happen, is that the institutions will take what's amazing in DeFi tech, right, and bring it into their world. Now, being honest, it's not going to happen tomorrow. It's going to take them like 2-3 years to get into this world, right? But and in that process, I do think that the world of DeFi protocols that are sort of like very permissionless, I think that will go down, actually.
So the convergence of DeFi, TradFi is going to come with a set of wins, and it's going to come with a set of losses,
yes,
whether we like it or not.
Yes.
Wait, we got to just focus on one thing you just said there. You think DeFi will go down. Do you think as the industry gets more mature, DeFi really steps into almost the shadows as an alternative system for people who want to access it, but it isn't really front-facing. It isn't really these amazing apps with these amazing user interfaces that are regulated and forefront?
So let's me re-articulate. I will say DeFi will mature.
Okay.
Right? It won't go down. It will mature, and there are people in our industry that would want it to mature, so it will reach more, more adoption, more mainstream adoption. And there are people in the industry that will say, well, that's against our original ethos, right? Unfortunately, I think for the second group, the world right now still runs with, sovereign countries, regulations, and banking system. And I think that if we should embrace bringing DeFi protocols into this new world of institutions and regulation. Because if we continue to fight this, we're not going to get the adoption we want for this new financial ecosystem that we're trying to build here for the last decade and a half almost.
The last thing I want to talk about with you is something Marissa and I were talking about before the show, is that institutional adoption has not slowed down, despite us having a major liquidation event on October 10th, the largest we've seen in the history of crypto.
Yeah.
Crypto's existence. And so make sense of that for me. I mean, what does that tell you? Just a year ago, if we saw a liquidation event like that, we wouldn't be sitting here at a conference. We wouldn't be optimistic about builders in the space. We wouldn't be optimistic about what banks are doing. Talk to me about that maturation from your perspective.
So, to quote smarter people, this is the tale of two cities, right? It's the best of times and it's the worst of times. If you are only in crypto assets and speculative assets and alternate assets, then it's probably very hard for you right now because this is a cycle and we're now liquidity is getting sucked out and we know what happened. We've been here, right? This is not the best of times. But in the tale of two cities, the other part of this city is looking at this from just, this is a new financial technology that we can use to upgrade. We're not going to stop because Bitcoin price is going down. We're going to continue because we can now move money faster and better, and we can, provide more access. And I really think that this tale of two cities will be with us actually for the next 2 years, probably before maybe the cycle changes again.
And arguably, the bounce back was so swift. If anything, it tested the resilience of the networks that
Hopefully.
we've actually built so far. So it is a progress indicator, as painful as it was to test.
Agree.
Goldie, thank you so much for joining us. I look forward to the next city that we see you in.
Yeah. Hopefully it will be something exotic.
Maybe it's going to be Hong Kong.
Maybe
you'll be at Consensus
Surprise.
in February. All right. All right. That was Fireblocks SVP of Payments and Network, Goldie. We are going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
From a small trading port to one of Asia's economic tigers, Hong Kong built a reputation on something rare: the ability to take fast-moving markets and give them structure. For half a century, global capital came here for one reason: Hong Kong knew how to turn frontier markets into functioning ones. Whether it was the first wave of Asian IPOs, the rise of multinational deal-making in the 90s, or the deep liquidity that defined the 2000s, Hong Kong made complexity investable. And now, the frontier has shifted again. Internet capital markets, a new system of finance being built at internet speed. And Hong Kong is once again doing what it does best: designing rules that invite innovation. This February, Solana Accelerate lands in Hong Kong, side by side with Consensus Hong Kong. We will bring founders, institutions, and policymakers into the same room, the same energy, the same opportunity, because Hong Kong turns experiments into industries. To get your tickets, head to solana.com/events. Solana Accelerate Hong Kong. See you soon.
Hello, if you're just joining us, we're coming to you from Solana Breakpoint in Abu Dhabi. Our next guest joins us at the desk now, Ariel Seidman. Ariel is the CEO and founder of HiveMapper. And for those of you who haven't heard of HiveMapper before, it's a decentralized mapping network that uses a crypto-integrated dashcam to build a fresh, detailed global map. Ariel, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here. We've been talking a lot about DPIN at the desk. It really has been one of the major themes coming out of our conversations here. And something I noted to Marissa is DPIN was all the rage, I feel, for a time, and then it kind of stepped out of the spotlight as some of the more institutional narratives took over. But Marissa brought up a good point earlier. You know, the conversations we're having here telling us that, you know, the builders never went away. The product, the people like you kept building. The products are getting better. So talk to us a little bit about the state of DPIN from your perspective.
Well, I feel like the narrative in crypto changes like every month. So like something gets hot and then like it's not hot. So yeah, no, DPIN definitely had its moment in the sun for sure. But you know, as a builder, you just like stay focused on like building. Doesn't matter, like markets go up, markets go down. Like our job is to build like an incredible mapping network for our customers. So we added like Lyft, we added Volkswagen, we added NBC, Ricoh. So there's a whole bunch that we've kind of been adding and servicing them. And so that's the thing that ultimately matters, is that there's like actual people using and actual customers using the product and loving the product. One of our bigger customers actually just kind of moved it into a multi-year, multi-million-dollar contract, so we're excited about that as well. And so yeah, that's the thing that ultimately matters at the end of the day. Like, you know, hype is interesting, but it's also very fleeting, right? I tell the team all the time, is like, you know, when the crypto markets overall go up, you feel 50% smarter. But you have to be willing to accept when they go down 50%, that it's going to make you feel 50% dumber.
For our audience watching at home, we're talking about the Lyft partnership, Volkswagen partnership. What do those look like?
Yeah. Okay. So let's take Lyft, right? So Lyft is trying to provide good ETAs to their customers, right? Like how long before that Lyft shows up wherever you're standing, right? In the cold or the rain or the heat, whatever it may be. And so what they're trying to figure out is like, okay, what impacts that ETA? Well, construction does, right? If 2 out of the 3 lanes are blocked, okay, are there traffic lights at every single intersection? Are there stoplights at every single intersection? Was the speed limit at every single road that you're taking? So we provide all of that data and incredibly fresh data, right? And so that's like one very specific example. Volkswagen, for their autonomous vehicle, they're doing pickup and drop-off points. Right, there's no driver, so the driver needs to know is like, okay, is there construction where I want to do that pickup? Are there fire hydrants? What are the parking restrictions? All of these like super detailed information is coming from the HiMapper network. So that's the beautiful part about this, is that like there's actually impacting real people. Once we get to like what we refer to as like scale in a given market, then we'll start to actually like make our map available to end consumers and customers. So today, all of the data that we're generating is going to other businesses, but once we get to scale in specific regions, then we can turn around and provide our map, which we think is pretty awesome.
And the data is generated from folks who are driving around with devices in their cars, collecting this data, providing it to the network in return for honey tokens.
That's right, yeah, you nailed it.
There we go.
So it's a lot about real-time data integration so that people very much have up to the second knowledge about the map or where they're navigating towards. We've seen products before like Waze, and also, I think principally something like HiMapper is opposed to a product like Google Maps. So in terms of like that centralization of the current incumbents, why is it imperative that we break up that that focus or like that dominance?
So a couple things. So one is, I used to work at Yahoo Maps, right? And back in the day, like both Yahoo Maps and Google Maps, they can get you from point A to point B, right? And so it was kind of pretty hard to differentiate at the time. And then Waze came along, which you just mentioned, so I'm going to get back to that really quickly, is Waze came along, and all of a sudden, Yahoo Maps and Google Maps felt very stale, right? And so going back to the point that you made in terms of the cameras, right, like the next leap here in terms of freshness is actually providing cameras with intelligence at the edge, right? Because Waze can't see. All Waze does is basically says like, okay, did you see an accident? And then, so it's really relying upon our eyes to interpret what happened, right? So it sees a relatively small amount of things versus our cameras. Getting back to your point around decentralization, is look, I think it creates a more resilient network, right? With centralization, like you always have this issue of like, wait, is Google going to continue to invest in it at the same level that they did last year, right? Or the year before? Their priorities may shift, right? By decentralizing this, it actually makes the thing much more resilient. But you do want like a diverse supply, right? You want some people who are very motivated by tokens, but you also want other people who are just motivated because like we're actually providing a great camera, and it's good for insurance claims, it's good for fleet monitoring, all that type of stuff. So I think for us, it's about the resiliency of these mapping networks, that it's not just at the whims of some corporate vice president who's like, I need more budget for this, so I can't do this thing for any longer.
You mentioned earlier that it was a matter of scale. So what stage are you currently at, and what would you consider critical mass before this becomes easy to use by anyone and everyone?
So it's so good question. So we've mapped 36% of the global road network. I think maybe when we talked last, we're probably like 8 or 10.
It was less, yeah.
So
Wow,
huge amount.
Congratulations.
Yeah. So we've made some good progress, but let's take a region like Los Angeles, okay? So it's about 100,000 road kilometers, okay? If we can refresh 90% of those 100,000 road kilometers every day, I mean, obviously, the 405 would be refreshing a lot more than once a day, right? but at all roads, then you can provide a map, right, in the LA region. So it's really going to be like at a region by region level where we would have a great map, and then we would fill in other areas with some third parties while we're kind of getting to scale, into Santa Barbara, because people from LA go to Santa Barbara, all that type of stuff. So you still have to provide, real utility, real value. And so that was the way that Waze grew, right? Waze grew kind of region by region, and so it became really valuable in certain markets, but less valuable in other markets, and then they kind of all caught up.
I took an autonomous vehicle for the first time here in Abu Dhabi, and so autonomous vehicles are top of mind.
Yeah.
You mentioned your business model when it comes to that just a few moments ago. Is the future you're working towards more providing data for autonomous vehicles as we see more of these on the roads, or do you really see the business split to consumer maps like we were just talking about and data for autonomous vehicles?
Both, right? I mean, I think that we've definitely built with the level of accuracy and positioning, and I won't bore you with all the technical details on the mapping side. But yes, so we can service somebody like a Volkswagen for sure. That's very important for us to be able to go do. And there's some other partners that hopefully in the future we'll be able to talk about in that regard. And also, there's 1.2 billion vehicles in the world, right? That's a lot of vehicles, and it will take 50 plus years until maybe until the majority of people are using self-driving vehicles. So we're in this transition phase where there's going to be both, and there's going to be both for a very long time, in my view.
Ariel, thank you so much for joining us at the desk. I look forward to talking to you again, and maybe that number will have climbed even more.
Yeah.
All right.
I hope so. It's my job.
That was Hive Mapper CEO and founder Ariel Seidman. We are going to take a quick break. When we come back, more from Solana Breakpoint.
From a small trading port to one of Asia's economic tigers, Hong Kong built a reputation on something rare: the ability to take fast-moving markets and give them structure. For half a century, global capital came here for one reason: Hong Kong knew how to turn frontier markets into functioning ones. Whether it was the first wave of Asian IPOs, the rise of multinational deal-making in the 90s, or the deep liquidity that defined the 2000s, Hong Kong made complexity investable. And now, the frontier has shifted again. Internet capital markets, a new system of finance being built at internet speed. And Hong Kong is once again doing what it does best: designing rules that invite innovation. This February, Solana Accelerate lands in Hong Kong, side by side with Consensus Hong Kong. We will bring founders, institutions, and policymakers into the same room, the same energy, the same opportunity, because Hong Kong turns experiments into industries. To get your tickets, head to solana.com/events. Solana Accelerate Hong Kong. See you soon.
Hey everyone, welcome back to CoinDesk Live. We're coming to you from Abu Dhabi, where Solana's Breakpoint is underway. This is the biggest Breakpoint to date. Our next guest joins us now at the desk, co-founder of 1inch, Sergey Kunz. Hey Sergey.
Hi everyone. Hi.
How's the event been for you so far?
Yeah, busy and very interesting. I've seen a lot of new announcements from Jupiter and a lot of customer feedback on the booth of 1inch.
It's always nice to come to these IRL events. You know, you get to have conversations, you get to hear about announcements, and you also get to speak to customers, get feedback, like you've said. Talk to us about how important, how much time you dedicate to coming to events like this. What's the benefit you get?
So I personally, I have a feeling that I'm living on these events and living in an airplane. So it's very important for us to collect all the customer feedback. I recently came also from Argentina. Was also fun also to participate in the Uniswap Cup, playing football. I think I was the only one founder who was playing soccer with the teams. Yeah, it's very important to speak with the community to get the feedback to understand, okay, what we need to improve to build better products so everyone can use it.
So what are some of those core product improvements that have arisen for you throughout your conversations today?
So we spoke today here at Solana conference about our Solana products. So we launched this year Solana support with intent-based swaps, so everyone can swap without having fear being attacked by math bots. So it's based on a Dutch auction. This is the beauty of Solana. The block time is very, very fast, and we get really great execution for the user. And the cross-chain support for bringing everyone from all other EVM-compatible chains into Solana ecosystem to be able to use these nice products here.
Sergey, along with the announcements that you were excited about watching, you had an announcement of your own, and that is 1inch becoming the exclusive swap provider for Ledger Multisig. Talk to us about this partnership, what it's going to enable for organizations.
So you recognize there was a hack in terms of Bybit and Gnosis Safe, Multisig. And I think Ledger took this opportunity to build an enterprise-grade and institutional-grade product, and they did it, and used us as a partner to offer best execution for swaps of any assets the institutionals hold in the multi-sig self-custody wallets.
I think you've previously spoken about blind signing being a structural weakness in DeFi. Can you talk to us a little bit more about that and what it's going to take to remedy?
It's actually what happened with the Bybit hack. So the attackers were able to manipulate a library what was attacking only specific wallets, and actually faked the screens for signing. If they would use nowadays Ledger multisig and the ledger itself, they would really understand what they are signing on the wallet, on the hardware wallet. It would explain that it's not the multisig where the funds will go, but another address what is potentially also blacklisted. So we work together with Ledger also to improve the activity where we block bad actors. If someone tries to put on wallet for the signature, we also verify through using multiple providers if this address is a bad actor address. Yeah, it's what improved the safety of the customers.
So how much of the risk is eliminated through this solution?
So it's not possible to fake something anymore when Ledger can parse the transaction and explain properly on the nice screen what they have nowadays on the new wallets. So it's I would say it's not possible anymore because they have really high secured environment and architecture as well in place for this.
Why did it take so long for the solution? And if blind signing could lead to an attack of this magnitude, why did it exist
now?
Yeah.
So the thing is, I think like to fake something like that you sign something bad, it's a targeted attack. Yeah, it's like there are criminals who targeted specific people with bigger pockets, and it's not really a problem for the normal user because it's highly difficult to inject such a transaction to someone. You need to even maybe do some social engineering. Yeah, so to look maybe in the garbage of the persons to find out what they are doing and how they act, where they go, and what they do. So to be able to somehow inject into the computer something. So it took time for the adoption, and I'm really proud and happy that Ledger is pushing this forward. We started it already around 2022 with our 1-inch wallet, what did clear signing, but on the software wallet. And now we have additional protection on the hardware wallet when you connect one Ledger to 1-inch wallet, so they work together and do double clear signing.
We recently had Goldie from Fireblocks at the desk, and we were talking about institutional adoption of DeFi being slow. And I'm curious to hear from your perspective, is it because of technicalities like this that institutions are maybe not as interested in participating in DeFi yet? And how long do you think it's going to take for us to solve these types of issues so that TradFi can enter?
So most of the institutionals are using custody services. So it's more comfortable for them, more understandable for them as well. So the wallet, it's not the biggest problem. Of course, there are some institutions who want to have self-custody, like a Ledger multi-sig wallet. The main problem is, I think, that most of the institutionals cannot just swap on Uniswap, for example, or also even the DEX aggregators who are not providing specific grade of compliance and processes, standard processes like KYB of the liquidity providers. At 1inch, we built since a couple of years already institutional ready products. So you remember this time where TVs came with HD ready. So we do institutional ready nowadays, and some of them are already using 1inch. We provide a solver system what settle the orders from our customers in compliant manner. So our foundation do KYB with this solver. So it's professional market makers most of the cases, like Wintermute and GSR. And there's a compliance team who is monitoring always that their money stays clean. And if something happens, they just get they cannot access the orders what coming from 1inch network.
So 1inch saw a series of barriers to entry that were kind of unique to institutions that perhaps didn't exist for the rest of the market that it uniquely designed for, is what I'm hearing.
Yes, we built institutional ready protocols, as we did also recently with the Aqua protocol for liquidity provisioning. So yeah, we need to give them tools, so they are able to work in our ecosystem and not trying to figure it out by themselves. Actually, they did something like that where they started to scan the Uniswap pools to understand how dirty this liquidity is. And but less of them can do that really, and less of them understand how to do that.
Sergey, thank you so much for joining us at the desk. It was a pleasure. We got to get you back to that booth.
Yeah, thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
That was 1inch co-founder Sergey Kunz. All right, we are moving right along.
We are blitzing through these interviews.
We are literally blitzing through these interviews.
How's that knowledge retention going for you at the minute?
It's going well.
It's not the one in, one out.
I mean, the jet lag is kind of crazy, so I'm retaining the information. Only time will tell. Time will tell how deep it's in. But what I'm really taking away is the Solana ecosystem is thriving.
Very much so, and I think they're very much focused on all of the critical conversations that are pervasive throughout the broader industry as a whole. A lot of what we're hearing from various founders are recognition of barriers to entry, recognition of novel opportunities, new applications of emerging technologies mapping onto old protocols, in some ways strategic pivots in that regard. So I think there's a lot of dynamic startup thinking that we were very much used to seeing in the Silicon Valley mindset that wasn't as evident in early crypto as we see it now.
What I love is, for me, in the headlines, two narratives have dominated the Solana conversation this year. It was meme coins and it was institutional adoption.
Two farther ends of the spectrum.
Right, both, right? And the conversations we're having here at the desk have been everything in between. You know, we haven't just focused on meme coins and culture. We actually haven't focused on it at all.
We haven't touched it yet.
We haven't touched it. I hope that we will, because it is a little fun. We've talked about institutions, but we've heard from builders. We've heard from investors. We've I've spoken to retail traders on the floor. It really is everyone from every part of the Solana ecosystem coming together here in Abu Dhabi to discuss how to progress the ecosystem further, and if I want to take a step back, how to progress the industry.
And again, it goes back to a point we made earlier about how we saw this, crypto grassroots movement bottom up and then meeting the top-down players. And I think we're finally at that point where we're seeing that diffusion of ideas between the two. I think it was the interview with WorldPay where we saw that the pendulum swung from how do we get crypto businesses to use conventional payment infrastructure to how can we offer crypto solutions to conventional payment providers. So seeing that pendulum swing has been really fascinating.
Let's talk more about the Solana ecosystem now. Emmett Hollier joins us at the desk. Emmett, you are Solana Mobile's GM. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. Good to be here.
All right, let's talk about Solana Mobile.
Sure.
Okay. I remember when the first device came out, and I remember thinking, like, how is this going to work? Do I have to carry that and my phone? I'm not really sure. I'm one of those users who really has to be sold. Then everybody kind of like bought into it. Yep. Now you've iterated on that for a new device, but just take us back to the basics for people who are watching. Most people, I get in the Western world, have an Apple or a Samsung device. What's the value prop for Solana's mobile device?
Yeah, I think if you look at all the innovation happening in crypto, there's like one major gap, which is mobile. The truth is, for people who just want to buy some tokens on Coinbase or on Binance, it works, right? If you want to buy a little Bitcoin, buy a little Ethereum, buy a little Sol, you can do that. But the moment you want to step into where all the interesting stuff is happening, DePIN, gaming, all of it, you are totally blocked. There's no real secure way to self-custody your assets on a phone, and you don't get access to anything native. You have to rely on weird kind of web workarounds where you launch a browser within another app just to access websites. And so we said that's the problem. If crypto is going to continue to grow and innovation is going to continue to grow, there needs to be native solutions. There needs to be a secure way for customers to hold assets on a phone, and that's what we've been setting out to solve. We started with Saga. That was a great learning experience. We sold about 20,000 of those devices, but earlier this year we launched Seeker, which we've now sold 150,000 of.
So going back to your point about the development of crypto apps that are mobile first or mobile ready, they're still at the mercy of the gatekeepers, i.e. Google Play Store and the Apple Store. So why is Seeker or just Solana Mobile more generally sort of the big breakthrough moment for applications who are trying to get past those workarounds?
Yeah, so one of the core products that we ship with Seeker and ship with Saga is the Solana dApp Store. The Solana dApp Store is the place to access all of the great native Solana first mobile applications, because without our store, there's not really a great place to get that, right? You're sort of dependent on remembering which websites to go to, or maybe there's a few apps that can sneak past Google and sneak past Apple, but otherwise, there's no great one place to go see everything that's happening. And so we built a native app store. We've had over 225 teams launch totally new, totally native apps. And so for users who have our phones, they get to download and use those apps just like they would if they were available in the other stores, but in most cases, they're not.
I'd love to hear more about the dApp Store from the builder's perspective, because when we look at the traditional app stores that Marissa just mentioned, they can be pretty extractive to developers and builders who want their app listed on that store. Talk to us about the builder reception you've had and what the model is.
Yeah, so the fees are obviously a really challenging part of launching in the traditional stores. Most of the time, it's anywhere from 15 to 30%. In crypto, that doesn't work. Crypto is the land of no middlemen. There's no such thing as gatekeeping and taking taxes. And so for a lot of peer-to-peer transactions or anything on-chain, there's no room for 30% tax. But it goes beyond that. There's also just really restrictive policies. Putting the fees aside, most of the time, if you have crypto in your marketing, you mentioned Solana, you're going to get arbitrarily blocked. And so we don't have any of those extractive policies or restrictive policies, but also, most importantly, we have users who really use the phone, right? It's great if we build an app store and philosophically it doesn't charge fees and it's crypto friendly, but if nobody uses the apps, developers aren't going to care. And what we've seen with Seeker is People are downloading apps. They're spending a ton of money. We've had over $2 billion in assets flow through Seekers in the first 4 months since we launched it. So for developers, it's great. They get to launch products. They have a really hardcore user base, and they can actually make money.
What's the most popular app?
It changes every week. The good news is we're constantly seeing new apps coming through. The top of the store is constantly changing. So each week it genuinely does change over. Our users are downloading everything. When you look at iPhones and Android devices, most people download like 1 app a quarter. For us, it's like an app a day.
You mentioned earlier that the real power of Solana Mobile is it's a gateway to the entire Solana universe through a mobile device, which is phenomenal for a crypto native user base that really wants to get knee deep into everything. But when it comes to marketing a device like this to a non-crypto native crowd, what is the appeal there? Is it through the hardware of the device, or is it through just the curiosity and appeal of everything that's happening in an app store that doesn't exist anywhere else?
Yeah, one of the things that's actually surprised us about who has bought this phone is we thought for sure it was going to be
DJs.
The most hardcore DJs on Solana. And don't get me wrong, they're there. The people who came all the way to Abu Dhabi for Breakpoint, they have the phone. But there's also lots and lots of users who maybe had a centralized exchange account, maybe started to dabble in self-custody, but didn't really have an obvious next step. There was no like, oh, maybe I'll go to a website and download an extension. It's all a little bit kind of scary from the outside. Because this phone makes it simple, it makes it easy, it makes it secure, we found it's a really natural first step for a lot of users. And
so it's not just for the pros.
It's maybe not explicitly, we thought it might be, but we're seeing a whole bunch of adoption from kind of that next wave of crypto users.
You mentioned it's more secure than other devices out there for folks who want to interact with crypto. Talk to us a little bit about that security. How does it differ from any of the other phones on the market for people who want to interact with crypto?
Yeah, so most phones, if you download a crypto wallet, it's primarily managed in software, where your keys are only as safe as you trust the whole phone's operating system to be. And by and large, phone operating systems have been pretty secure over time, but it's also incumbent upon developers to be very careful and follow all the best security practices. What we've built is called Seed Vault, and it sits 1 level deeper than the OS. And so by going 1 level deeper, more tightly integrating to the phone, we can do hardware-type protection of seeds and key phrases in a way that other phones just can't.
And on a product level or on a hardware level, what are the traits of the Seeker that are fundamentally different to the Saga?
Yeah, so Saga was a really great first device, but there was plenty of feedback from the community. You mentioned at the top, do I carry this as a second phone? Is this my primary phone? The truth is, we have users who do it both ways, and for those users, if it's a secondary device, it can't be big and it can't be heavy. So the first thing we set out to do was make it smaller, make it more compact, make it easier to take with you on the go. But we also upgraded the screen. It's much brighter. We've now got 3 cameras. It's really, at the end of the day, it's a really great flagship device. I'll be totally honest. One of the most interesting things I'm hearing on the floor here, now that we've shipped phones, is people coming up to me saying, it's way nicer than I thought it would be. I thought it was going to be...
Do you have it? Where is it?
Of course, it's right here. It's right in front of me.
Show us.
So,
is it your only phone?
It is one of many phones that I have. It's important for my job to make sure I know what everybody's doing. But yeah, so as you can see, it's bright and it's you can't see, but it's light. So for us, it was really important to build something that we were really proud of and something that users would just love to hold, because it doesn't matter how great the software experience is. If you put it in your hand and you hate it, you're never going to pick it back up.
And I know Seeker's only launched relatively recently, but what are you seeing in terms of the markets that are demanding this kind of device?
We've shipped to over 50 countries, which is a lot.
Are you surprised by that?
We are. I think one of the challenges is when you ship hardware, there's so much more you have to think about than just shipping software. You have to clear all sorts of regulatory hurdles and operational hurdles. But it was important to us that we got phones into as many customer hands around the world as possible. And so with Saga, it was more North American focused, some Eastern Europe. Now it is truly global. Less than 20% of Seeker sales were in North America. So we have a lot of Asian distribution and Middle East and Europe. So it's been really exciting to kind of watch our phone's footprint grow with crypto's footprint.
It's interesting you say that. The adoption in the US is maybe flatlining or getting a little bit lower while some regions in the rest of the world are increasing. What is that telling you about the future of crypto adoption? Do you think it's specific more to the phone? Like, I'm curious to hear what your takeaway is from that.
For us, for the phone, it's multifaceted. One is Android is more of a global platform than a North American only, right? Like, I'm sure you both love your iPhones. I know I've loved iPhones. So it's a little bit harder, I think, for some of our North American customers to overcome that hurdle. So that's one. Whereas Android globally is the dominant mobile OS. But from a crypto perspective, there's a lot of problems, especially on payments fronts and access to finance, that crypto genuinely solves in markets with less developed financial institutions, less trustworthy governments. And so it's always been really interesting to me to travel and hear from people how they're using Seeker. And it's a lot of paying friends, paying family, investing money, earning yield for the first time. So I think part of it is just that crypto solves problems in other parts of the world even more so than it does in the US.
And it's a decent price point. I think it's about $500.
It is. I'd love to sell it for $1 if I could, but $500 is pretty reasonable for what you get. I think when you look at competitive products in the mobile landscape, there's not a ton kind of in that middle zone. There's a lot that are really cheap on the Android front, like in the $100 range, and then there's plenty of flagship phones, $1,000. So we really wanted to try and cut the middle as best as we could. We're ultimately super proud of what we were able to put out for a very reasonable price, and our customers think so as well.
Okay, before we let you go, what are you looking forward to over the next 2 days here at Breakpoint?
Great question. One, I want people to just continue to come up to me and tell me they are very happy they had the phone. I went from months and months and months of people asking where their phone would be to now they have it and they can tell me that they love it. So if you have one and you're here, come tell me you love it. It feels very good. But honestly, the second thing is I'm just excited to talk to builders. There's a lot of teams here building really cool products. And so while we have data to say people use these phones, they'll spend money, it's still on us to help these teams see that opportunity. So we're going to spend a lot of time with teams here, give them the support that they need, help build out that dApp Store inventory so every customer has 10, 15, 20 apps that they love.
Have you done any of the activities in any of the booths?
I haven't yet. I've been on the media circuit all day and meeting with some teams around the ecosystem. Is there anything you'd suggest?
We haven't done any either.
Okay.
I mean, we heard about a fitness booth, and I think we want to test our mettle.
So one thing I will say, the one booth that I have spent time at is our own. We have a big vending machine full of Seekers, and so people can come spin the wheel and have a chance to win a Seeker. Last I checked, the line was about 150 people long, so you may want to head down there soon.
Do you get VIP status?
I'll see what I can do.
Okay.
I'll see what I can do.
Okay.
But yeah, you guys should come down. It's been fun. It's also great. It's a really cool opportunity to take a look at our community.
Emma, it's been such a pleasure. We will see you at the booth later.
Please
Maybe
do.
we'll win a phone and we will talk about it tomorrow. So there's some incentive. I don't know if it could be rigged.
I'll see what I can do if I can
Oh.
tilt the scale. Thank you so much, guys.
Emmett, thanks so much.
Thank you.
That was GM of Solana Mobile, Emmett Hollier. We are going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
From a small trading port to one of Asia's economic tigers, Hong Kong built a reputation on something rare: the ability to take fast-moving markets and give them structure. For half a century, global capital came here for one reason: Hong Kong knew how to turn frontier markets into functioning ones. Whether it was the first wave of Asian IPOs, the rise of multinational deal-making in the 90s, or the deep liquidity that defined the 2000s, Hong Kong made complexity investable. And now, the frontier has shifted again. Internet capital markets, a new system of finance being built at internet speed. And Hong Kong is once again doing what it does best: designing rules that invite innovation. This February, Solana Accelerate lands in Hong Kong, side by side with Consensus Hong Kong. We will bring founders, institutions, and policymakers into the same room, the same energy, the same opportunity, because Hong Kong turns experiments into industries. To get your tickets, head to solana.com/events. Solana Accelerate Hong Kong. See you soon.
Welcome back to CoinDesk Live from Solana Breakpoint. This is the end of our programming. The time kind of flew.
It very much flies by.
I love it here.
I think it's just the diversity of ideas after idea after idea. And like we said earlier, it's the full spectrum of products and viewpoints. So it never really feels like you're dragging through the same topic.
We're learning a lot about the Solana ecosystem. We're learning a lot about the United Arab Emirates as a Web3 hub, the regulatory process here in Abu Dhabi and Dubai, and the innovation that's come on the back of that. So I look forward to learning more about that tomorrow. What are you looking forward to tomorrow?
Honestly, just more of these ideas that are coming through, because I think what we're witnessing through the diversity of our guests is just the sheer amount of different perspectives. I feel like originally, again, when our industry was much younger, we all sort of shared this one mission, this one ethos behind decentralization, behind the democratization of finance. And now what we're seeing is all of these various interpretations coming through on a product level, and I think that's phenomenal to see.
We talked a little bit about this from a regulatory perspective, but when we go home, you live in Singapore, I live in the United States. When I go home, the conversation is really America focused, and coming to events like this just really highlights how much of a global industry this is and how much development, how much innovation is happening outside of the United States. I said earlier in the broadcast, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about Singapore and the APAC region. I mean, hearing what folks who are building here in the Middle East have to say, how does that compare to what's going on in Singapore?
I think what we're seeing in Singapore is we've had a couple, let's call them hiccups around regulatory ambiguities that have meant that certain crypto protocols have actually left Singapore, and they've started to look more keenly on markets like Dubai and the Emirates. But what we're also seeing is that Singapore's got this underlying competitive edge or pursuit against other markets like Hong Kong as another financial hub. And both of these markets are very much fixated on becoming fintech capitals. And crypto has very much become an epicenter of fintech development. So I think what we're seeing is, again, tax friendliness, ease of setup, regulatory clarity, and that's just emerging in markets that run relatively independently from the US. But I will say, though, that I still think the US market is a North Star for the rest of the world. The other markets like Singapore can't function entirely. Like, we can't ignore that noise. We still use that as a guiding reference point. So it's not to say that all of this progress would happen with or without the United States.
I think there's a misconception when we talk about regulatory clarity, that regulatory clarity means regulatory ease. And what you've just said about Singapore is, I know Singapore has some kind of strict regulation around crypto, and so if you can navigate within that, it can be good for your company. But you've said, firms are starting to look at other regions, and so I think that's an important point to talk about too. You can have clear regulations, and those regulations can be difficult to navigate. They can be difficult for innovation, especially when companies are so early in decentralization processes, so early in figuring out, what it is they actually want to build and that product market fit.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a difference between strict, clear, and bullish, right? And I think there's definitely an appetite to see how these technologies can be embedded within our markets, but there's still this sort of high qualification criteria. We got there. But again, it's not against all crypto businesses. It's more about certain facets of it that I think certain companies need to navigate around. But I think what's also been very interesting is seeing that the regulatory clarity in certain markets are not as highly correlated with where we see a lot of the developer initiatives happening and the emerging developer markets, which, India is a massive one, Vietnam is huge, Latin America. So in areas where we see clear use cases, but regulatory clarity isn't necessarily as established, there's almost like this counterpoint to all of that progress.
I have a question for you that has nothing to do with what we're talking about, because we were just talking about Seeker. Would you carry a Seeker phone?
I'd definitely be interested in it, but I think I've still got a foot firmly planted in the crypto universe that we're currently in, and a foot planted in, I guess, the traditional world, like the non-crypto world. So unless those two blend together in a way where I can kind of do it all in one place, I still feel like I would end up in a situation you were in where I would have 2 devices and I would be bouncing between depending on what world I need to be in at any given point.
You know what we didn't get to ask Emmett, and maybe we will go to the booth later and I'll ask him, is if the vision for crypto-enabled devices is kind of like the Apple universe, right? Like, will there one day be a Solana laptop and a Solana phone and maybe a Kudus ring instead of an Apple Watch? Like, will we have these integrations to make it a little bit easier for people who are used to, having all of the Apple products, and maybe that would bring more adoption to places like the United States?
Yeah, I think definitely that seamless integration between not just apps, but app stores and then therefore hardware devices. Again, I think that brings DeepIn back into the conversation in terms of the physical infrastructure that supports these networks. But the point at which we get there, I'm not actually sure on just yet. I wonder how much coordination it's going to take between the devices themselves to allow all of the, the decentralized products that exist within the broader ecosystem to sort of happily function all together.
Yeah, I don't know what it will take to get there.
But we can speculate.
We could speculate all day long. So for our audience that's watching at home, they actually don't know about the videos we've been taking behind the scenes. I'm going to put those up on X later if you want to see them.
My gosh.
We've been having some fun conversations.
But we've been blindsiding our guests, and
we really have.
We've just been clicking record and saying do something. We've had TikTok dances. We've had, honestly, deer in the headlights moments.
Yes, we really have. It's all about improv here at the CoinDesk desk. So if you're watching and you end up at this desk somewhere around the world, come with your A game, because we are going to turn the camera on a commercial break and see
Get
what
ready.
you got.
Yeah.
I didn't do it to you. You didn't do it to me. Thank God.
I think that's because we're allies in this.
We are allies
We
in
do this to others, not onto ourselves.
Anthony Scaramucci needs a full glam squad.
He needs a full glam squad. We need to get him a ring light, a makeup crew, and a phone book.
We do need a ring light, a makeup crew, and a phone book, which I think
it's not a hard list. We can get that for
we
him.
can make happen for the mooch. All right, let's wrap this up. Thank you to everyone who watched our programming from home. We love bringing you these discussions for anyone who couldn't attend the event here in Abu Dhabi, so you can get a taste and a little bit of a flavor as to what's going on here. We're going to be here again tomorrow from 1:30 p.m. local time to 3:30 to bring you more from Solana Breakpoint. For Marissa True, I'm Jen Sanasi. We'll see you tomorrow.